Welcome to the Women Trailblazers podcast from the UWSP Women's Center for Equity, Development, and Leadership. Here at UW Stevens Point, we believe that women thrive when they participate in leadership at all levels of decision-making.
This podcast is dedicated to centering women and showcasing the incredible ways we lead together. Each episode, we explore stories of resilience, innovation, and empowerment. Our second series is part of UWSP's Point Out Loud pilot, and we're thrilled to have you join us.
Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Tracy J. Edmonds, speaker, DEI expert, entrepreneur, and author of Wild Hair. I met Tracy during our time at Uplift while she served on the Strategic Advisory Council. Today, we're going to talk about courage, how to be a source of strength, personal growth, and how to be your true, authentic self. Well, thank you again so much for being here today. From what I've seen from you and from what the time we've spent together, you are just this light. I'm in your energy, and I'm so excited for you to be here today. So you're a speaker, you're a DEI expert, and you're an author as well. So I'm curious, how did you get started with all of this?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you women about this topic. My journey was probably unlikely. I spent 31 years in a corporate environment, and just as I say unlikely, I also say maybe it was likely because when I think about that journey as a Black female, literally from the front lines of an organization to the executive ranks, I think that was the ultimate preparation to be a strategist when it comes to diversity and culture and HR, to be someone who could advocate for other women, especially women of color who are on their journey, and to be someone who could affirm other women who are on the journey and facing obstacles and not sure if they're real or perceived. And so as I think about it, I'm probably in some ways an unlikely entrepreneur because I was 31 years in corporate. And so to take that transition, but then also a very likely person based on that journey to be offering wisdom to women, individuals, and organizations, and to write a book about the lessons learned in that journey. So if possible, I kind of talked about two sides of the coin, being an unlikely yet likely author, entrepreneur, and strategist.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm curious, Tracy, what drew you to the work of centering women, specifically of color in the corporate field?
My own journey.
Yes.
Quite honestly, it was my own journey. I've always been a person who has fought for the underdog. When I think about my childhood and stories that my parents told about how I stood up for myself or stood up for others. The fighter. I've always been that individual. And it came quite natural as through my career, not only did I have a voice for myself, I tended to have a voice for others. And when I stepped into the Chief Diversity Officer role in the last 5 years of my corporate career, that was the job for me because I got to be that voice for others who didn't get an opportunity to express concerns, issues, challenges in the workplace in a way that their voice could make a difference. So I became that advocate. So it was a natural kind of transition, both from my personality and my own upbringing, because I certainly have my own challenges. For example, as a Black girl going to a private high school that was predominantly white and being one of the few in my classes. So I had to find my voice pretty early, and I had the opportunity to do that in my personal life, and I carried it forward professionally.
So I'm going to be vulnerable here. And I love the first two words of your book title. And, I'm thinking about my really good friend that I went to graduate school with. And I'm thinking about the day he explained to me about his Black daughters. And so we lived in the Chicagoland area. So we were in a suburb, and every Sunday he would take this wild trek into the center of the city of Chicago so his daughters could go to an all African-American house of worship, an all Black house of worship. And I asked him one day, because it seemed irrational to me Literally, it did. It's like, boy, really, that's what you're doing on a Sunday? We need to, we need to meet and work on our homework. Right? And he sat me down and he said, Lena, I need my daughters to grow up somewhere where they know they're beautiful.
Yes.
And so I'm looking at your words, wild hair, and I'm just wondering, how does that tie into what my friend taught me about being beautiful?
Yeah, that is a great question. So let me tell you about that title. That title refers to the pivotal point in my career where I decided to stop relaxing my hair. And, for your listeners who may not understand what that means, I had been relaxing or chemically straightening my hair since I was about 12 years old. And the goal was to have, and I'm using air quotes here, good hair, straight hair, and to look like the majority, right? Fit in, right? Because this tightly coiled, again, air quotes, nappy hair was not deemed acceptable. And as I learned when I started my career, it was not deemed professional.
Wow.
And so what beauty looked like, to your point, what beauty looked like was straight hair. And this pivot point in my career was driven just purely off of time. This was not me making a statement. This was not me getting back to my roots. This was none of this. I mean, I had straightened my hair, literally, ladies, since I was 12.
Yeah.
And so we are talking about 2015, 2014 about.
Yeah.
So you do the math, but I was probably I was 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to make this decision, this was about the amount of time I was spending to take care of my hair and to keep it in this way. And I was just tired of it. And so when I made that decision, it was a really big decision for me because I was concerned that I would no longer look the part of a corporate executive because my peers were primarily white and they were primarily male. And so making this statement and demonstrating my natural hair was going to mean I was leaning way into my blackness.
Yeah.
And there weren't a lot of women like me around. There certainly weren't women with natural hair in the executive ranks.
Yeah.
And there were few Black women in the executive ranks. And so I was so concerned that I would not be taken seriously, that my influence would be impacted because I wasn't seen as one of the group. I mean, being in group is a very powerful thing in society. And so sometimes we make all kinds of changes to how we speak, how we look, how we dress to be considered one of the group. And so I was making a bold declaration of who I really am and my difference from the rest of the group. And I didn't want people to be overly focused on that. Well, as I went through that process and I transitioned, what was really, really interesting is that other women, primarily Black, but white women as well, came up to me and said, "How did you do that?" And they didn't want to know, what is the process of stopping the chemical straightening of your hair. They wanted to know how I continued to be successful and influential in my career as I was showing up as my true selves, as my true self.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted to know is how can we be our true selves in this corporate environment and still get things done, still be respected, right?
Yes.
Because back to your friend, what we don't see in corporate environments, especially as Black women and women of color, and even for my white sisters out there, we don't often receive things that affirm us and say, just how you're showing up, girl, is just the way it ought to be.
Yep.
We don't get that.
We
right?
don't.
And so to step out there and say, I'm going to be even more myself because I'm going to stop this time-consuming, energy-consuming, money-consuming process and just be me, will I be accepted for just being me? And I was doing it in a very visual way. And so I can relate to your friend because what he wants to do is to show his girls that they can be beautiful just as they are. So they need to be surrounded by others who look like them. Representation matters.
Yeah.
matters. And I think a lot of times in environments, especially corporate environments that are heavily dominated by white males, they are getting affirmed. Their representation is there.
Yes.
Right. So they don't always get it because they live among it. Right.
Yes.
And so when you are being tacitly affirmed and you look to your right and you look to your left and you see individuals who look like you and are achieving levels of success, you say this is the right way for it to happen. Well, when you're one of us, like the three women here on this podcast, and we look to our right and we see white male, and we look to our left and see white male, and then we see other women who have adopted that look, that persona, that way of showing up, then we go, okay, I can't do it my way. If I want success, I need to do it their way. So the book Wild Hair, tying it back to your question, there's nothing wild about my hair, I would say, personally. However, it is wild when you think about the environment I was in. It was very different. And it's also a metaphor for when you get a wild hair and decide that you're at a crossroads and you're going to choose you.
Yeah.
So I got a wild hair and I chose myself.
I love it. All
that.
right. I have to say, like, this podcast has really turned into a mentoring sessions for me, and I just got it. I mean, I am just feeling your wisdom down to my toes. Thank you.
And how proud and fulfilled you must feel to look back on everything you've gone through and now being at where you're at today and just, you know, empowering other women who have been in a similar situation, especially through, you know, you wrote your first book. Like, how crazy.
You know, that is crazy. I'm glad you used that term because I will tell you, it was a bucket list item for me that I always wanted to write a book. I love the power of the written word, and I always envisioned myself writing a book. And so when I stepped away from corporate and I had the kind of time on my hands to do that, I decided to lean into it and to do that. So in many ways, it's making a dream come true. But also, I just fully believe that our journeys are here to be stepping stones for others, right? So at the end of my life, I know I'm not going to lay down, take my last breath and say, I wished I would have worked harder, right? No, that's not what's going to happen. And so having translated all that work into stepping stones for other women, so they can see the path forward and know they're not alone. That's what that journey was about. That's what the 30 years was about, is being able to pay it forward.
So I got to know, when you lay down, what are you going to say?
Oh, you know what I am going to say? I am going to say I was so loved. And I am going to say thank you for the life that I had and for the journey, you know, for the journey. That's what I'll probably say, or I hope to say.
Yeah.
How
Thank
cute.
Or maybe not yet.
Right.
I'm not done yet.
Good. You're an and woman. You get to say both. I've noticed that about you, right? It's this and that.
And, correct. Yes, ma'am.
I love it. This whole journey must be so healing for your inner child. And I'm curious, what is something that you would tell someone similar in your position that you were in? Or what is something that you wish your younger self would have known coming into a corporate field as a Black woman?
You know, for me, probably the thing that I would have told myself, my younger self, is to really spend the time understanding what I want out of my career. I had an incredibly successful career for the first 19, 20 years, but it was based on what others saw in me and the capabilities that I had and how they could use my skill set for the organization. And I reached a pivot point at 40, pregnant with baby number 3, and I'm waking up and I'm hating what I'm doing. And it's because I didn't really choose it for myself. And I went on to autopilot. I went into this place of I was making wonderful money. We had all the trappings of success, the wonderful vacations, the Lexus in the driveway, you know, the 2.5 kids, the 2.5 kids, because I had a bun in the oven that I was working on. But I had reached this point where I go, the work that I'm doing is disconnecting from who I am. And so I think when you're young, you don't always know who you are. And so that's evolving. But I certainly would have told myself or tell younger women to give some thought to who you are and how it aligns to what you do, and try to bring those closer and closer together. And that's an evolution, no doubt. I don't think at 21, 22, when I stepped into corporate, that I had any way of knowing what that would be. So it is an interaction between what you're doing in your career, who you're evolving to be. But I certainly wish I had been more thoughtful about that earlier on, and not woke up in a hot sweat at 40 going, oh my God, how did I get here? Right? And having to turn the ship.
Mm-hmm. And thank goodness you, for all of us who benefit from you, that you had the courage to turn the ship.
It does take courage. I appreciate you saying that, because courage is a big part of what I talk about in my book. And it's a big part of what I coach women on. And there's a nuance about courage that I like to remind people about. Courage means you are afraid. It means you're doing it with fear in your back pocket, right? So when women tell me they're afraid, I say, yeah. And guess what? You get to be courageous in this moment, because, when people tell these stories of how they took these big leaps in their careers, and there isn't a moment of fear, I'm not impressed. Because what's difficult is what you said, is when you have the courage to step out with fear in the back pocket, girl, and you say, I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing it scared. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know where this is going to take me, but I'm going to do it anyway. Those are the women that impress the hell out of me. The ones who weren't scared, that's not a story. That's just not a story.
Woo!
I love it.
I feel like you just tore me up.
Hey,
in a good way.
Because there's been so many times you probably have done things and you've been scared.
Yeah.
And you've done it anyway, and then you never gave two thoughts about it, because when it's behind you, it's like the relief. But pat yourself on the back, lady, because when you do it scared, that's huge.
Yeah.
You do it anyway, because every fiber of your being is saying, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know what success will be for me, but I know on the inside, I gotta do it. I gotta do it, and I'm scared as hell, and you do it anyway. Those are the heroes.
Woo.
Those are the sheroes.
Yeah.
The other people, get out of here. If you weren't scared, then it don't mean nothing to me.
I have chills. I swear. Serena just went through a big choice, and we went back and forth text messaging, and I'm glad she messaged me, but she kind of needed you.
Hey, it sounds like you got it covered, though. You got it covered. Yes.
And we did.
Awesome.
Kind of like zooming in on those anxieties and those fears you talked about as a woman, how have you dealt with that? And how do you think, what advice do you have to the women listening on this podcast to move forward and put that fear in your back pocket?
It's difficult to put fear in the back pocket and let it ride along, right? But if you try to resolve the fear, you will stay stuck, right? First and foremost, acknowledge it. It is okay to say, I am scared. It is okay. And you know what? In these corporate environments, that's not something you're going to hear. You're not going to hear that endorsed where someone says, oh, I was so scared when I decided, the CEO says, I was so scared when I decided to acquire XYZ company. You're not going to hear that talk track.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to give ourselves permission to say, in this moment, I'm afraid because I don't know what's on the other side of this decision. So acknowledging the fear is a big part of that. And then just taking one step. Because a lot of times I think what comes along with fear is this desire to understand the future, be able to predict it. And to say, you know what, if I take this job over that job, then X and Y and Z is going to happen. And we don't always know that. And so we don't have to have the whole map, but we do just take one step. I think it was Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take one step, right? And trust in that. And here's the thing, too, is decide and commit. Decide and commit. And what I mean by that is when you take that one step and you decide, make it work.
Oof.
Right? Because you could have decided otherwise, and you could have made that work. So choose what's in alignment to your spirit and what you want for yourself. Go with the fear in the back pocket. Take just one step and decide and commit. Make it work.
So listeners, I want to highlight the sentence that we should all be shook by, right? Here it is. If you try to resolve the fear, you will stay stuck.
You will. And you know what? I can tell you my own journey with this. So I leave corporate America, and I left because I couldn't grow anymore, right? One of my core values is personal growth. And my work was done. The opportunity to take on a different, bigger role wasn't there. It was time to pivot out of that. And I fully thought that I was going to go and be a head of HR at another organization. Started applying for jobs, was a finalist, me and another candidate, for a major role.
Yeah.
I didn't get it, and I was relieved. And talk about shook. I was like, okay, this is all I've done for 31 years, and now I am relieved to not be doing the thing I've always done. Confused.
Yeah.
Long walks, talking with me and my Savior, having like, okay, what is going on? I mean, if people would have driven up and down the road, they probably saw me regularly and were like, she's crazy, like she's talking to herself. Because what the message was is to do only what you love, Tracy. And what I loved is coaching women, and I love helping people with culture and diversity and HR strategy. And I'm thinking, well, you mean start my own business? Oh, hell no.
Yeah, that's right.
I am a dyed-in-the-wool corporate girl. How do I do that? I was so afraid. I didn't know how to do it. But I just started taking one step. Well, let's get a business coach. Let's start there. Let's write a book, because then you got something to sell, something to talk about. And I just kept taking steps each time with the fear squarely in my back pocket. And even today, I'm still afraid, because I'm only 3 years on the journey. And there are new things always coming my way. And I have to maintain the growth mindset and say, keep digging, keep learning, keep doing things, Tracy, and it will work out. And, just like the three of us here, we're smart women. So we can figure it out. We can figure out logistical things or things we have to go deep on. It's this heart here, working through confidence and courage and this mindset of, I'm capable, that keeps me moving forward.
It's actually funny how relevant this is to my career actually right now. You talk a lot about understanding what I want in my career, and it's really, really resonating with me. So thank you for all of that great advice. What is one thing you'd like to ask to everyone listening to this podcast to do to further unleash women?
Wow. The thing that I would ask people, especially the males who may be listening to this, because I think as women, we probably do this pretty well, but believe in women, right? Because so much of the structures that I have been a part of in my development, especially in that corporate development, that women come in with a discount right off the bat. And so what would life be like if you believed in women? No doubt. No doubt whatsoever. I have a best friend who is also a minister. And she says to me, isn't it going to be great when we get to heaven and God's a woman? I said, yes, it is. She said, the trick is going to be on them. That's the thing. When we get there and he is a she, and who knew all along? I'd be like, we knew. We knew.
Right. I just have this chorus in my head singing, hello, mama.
I love that. Yes, absolutely.
I'm curious, going back to your book, how do you use that storytelling to drive change, and how do you use that to empower other women who could have been in your same shoes?
You know what? I've been very blessed in that my career was long, 31 years. It included lots of different roles. And so to my clients' benefit, there's not much I haven't seen. or experienced or some version of. And so storytelling is critically important because I'm able to share my own personal experiences as well as those of women that I've coached during my corporate environment and those who coached me during my career to help show women that there is a path forward. But more than anything, what I find that women need and that the storytelling does, it affirms their experience. Because when we're in these environments, like I said before, where we don't see others like us, and there are very few, sometimes we think that our experience is our own, and maybe we're misperceiving it, and it can feel very lonely. And so when I'm able to relate a story, either from my book or some other story that I've experienced, it connects with women and it affirms them that there is not a damn thing wrong with you, girl. Not at all. Yeah. This shit is real. It happens. Yeah. And then we can move forward to the problem solving. Because think about it. We all just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And storytelling connects. It is human to want to be a part of something. And when I can tell you a story that connects you and invests you in my journey, and you can say, oh, I can relate to that. Kind of like you had some of those moments, Serena, but I can relate to that. I can relate to that. That lets you know, okay, you're not crazy. This is real. And if she stepped up out of it, I can too. Mm-hmm. And so storytelling is very compelling. It's very powerful. And I've always used it as a part of my career.
So within your book and your speaking engagement, what impact are you hoping to achieve with that?
You know what? I want more women to be a source of strength in their own lives and careers. That's what I'm here to do every single day. So if I can empower one more woman to own her decisions, own her life, own her career. And by that, I want to be clear. I don't mean climbing to the top and being a CEO. I don't mean you have to pivot out of corporate and go be an entrepreneur. Whatever success is for you, that you own that shit and you are comfortable with leading in your own life. That's it. Yeah. I don't want women to feel like I felt so often where I just felt like nobody saw me. Mm-hmm. No one cared. My career was not my own. That I didn't have options, that I'm in the meeting and I say something and then the next white male across the table steals it and says the same thing and I'm fighting to get it back. Mm-hmm. If I can help let people know it's real and here's a way around it, that's success for me. Yeah. So that's why I do what I do.
Good. How do we support your success? So you've got listeners on this podcast right now. What do you want to ask us to do to show up for you?
Oh my gosh, that is a wonderful question. I would ask all the listeners here, like I said, believe in women. That supports me. That makes my job a little bit easier when there are more people out there who believe in women. And that if you feel you are in a place where you're not heard or seen or stuck in your career or your personal life, reach out because I'm here for it. I am here for it. Buy the book is one way, or just reach out directly to me because I love coaching and assisting others to be their best selves. That's what I'm here for.
Great. How do we find you? Social media, website?
Yeah. You can find me. My website is tracyjedmonds.com. I am Tracy J. Edmonds on LinkedIn and on all social media. Great. So it'll be easy to find me.
I like that.
Thank you for that. Can you share an inspiring story from your work with women of color?
One that I just recently shared, I did a speaking engagement where I talked about leadership presence. So instead of executive presence, I like to talk about leadership presence because I don't believe that is something that only applies to those who want to be executives. Mm-hmm. We all need to have a presence in the way that we show up and lead in our lives. And this conversation, the speaking engagement, was around voice. And this was a woman, African-American woman that I was coaching, who was a chief of staff at Amazon. And she had a big job supporting a major leader there. And their calls were done on Zoom, right? Just like we're doing today. And it was interesting because she was having difficulty getting traction with the other folks around the call. And we discovered through our conversations that she wasn't on video with them. And so we just made a small tweak. Nobody was on video. We just made a small tweak. And she gets on video, presents herself well, commands the room, and starts getting the results that she wants to see. And even gets this positive feedback from her leader who says, I don't know what you're doing, but something has changed. And I really appreciate how you're showing up and the work you're getting done. So for me, that sounds like a simple thing. But for her, this was huge. And the reason why it inspires me is because when we decide that, again, this honesty with ourselves, this isn't working, right? And I talk about kind of how to be authentic. And the number one step is self-honesty. And to say that this isn't working, I want to be more effective in my leadership. And then we have to have the courage to do something different, right? So she had to come on video. What that means, nobody else is really on video, right? She has to get the face, the hair right? Because we hiding in the shadows. We don't have to worry about all that. And we can multitask and do whatever. So she makes herself present and accounted for. And others respond to that. Then we have to have the confidence to stay with it. Because not everybody is going to like that now we're visible and you're calling me out and I got to be on video and I have to do these things. She stayed with it. She was confident with it and she stayed resilient and it paid off. So it's just a small change, but it took the courage, the fear in the back pocket. It took the confidence and staying with it and being resilient. So there's small things like that I just celebrate with my clients when they hit these home runs by making small tweaks, they take effort to make change in their career.
How did she uncover what that small change should be?
When we were talking about the way that meetings were conducted, what she needed to do in order to get the results she needed, it became clear to me that her presence was the issue, right? And being able to connect with people. Let's just think about communication, right? Communication is best when we're face to face. And not only can we see one another, we can read the body language. We can feel the energy if we're in the same room. Well, if we're all on black screen, and you have to make a connection to invest people in getting work done for you, the more tools that we can have to connect, the better. So let's start with visual. Let's start there. And that was really the first step. But then it was also how she, conveyed herself, the book cover. Right?
The book cover.
So it's not just about just hopping on there, not being dressed for the occasion. Doesn't mean we got to get formal. We're not in the office, but it does mean we have to attend to how we're coming across and doing those things to create better communication and connection with individuals. And that's what shifted it. It's her ability to be seen, to be seen. And you can tell, right? When you can see me and I'm serious, but if I'm on black screen and I'm like, no, seriously, guys, I really need for you to turn those in, versus when I say, no, seriously, I need to, you see my facial expression, you see the seriousness. It's little things like that.
All right. So I just want to say that for her to be seen, she needed you to see her. And that's what working with Tracy J. Edmonds brings you.
You know what? Thank you for saying that. Because that is one of the things I pride myself on, is seeing you. I see you. I know what you're going through. I see you. I hear you. And I want to validate and affirm you. Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And sometimes that's all it takes. So powerful.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, Tracy, how can communities better support women of color in achieving their goals?
The first thing I said in terms of believing in women, one, that applies to all women. I think that the best way to support communities of color, women of color, or any women is not to treat us as a monolith. The experience for Black women is different than the experience for white women, than the experience for Asian women. It's different. So what we do have is a shared humanity and a shared experience from being female. However, African American women, which I know the best because that is me, they operate at a unique intersection. And being able to understand that and to operate from a place where you believe that the world is bigger than your backyard. That is one of the biggest things that I always tell people when I talk about diversity and difference, is one of the fundamental core mindset shifts that I like for people to make is to remember the world is bigger than your backyard. And what that means is drop the assumptions, operate from a place of curiosity. Don't assume that the things that we share in common make us alike. It just means we share some things in common, right? Because there's different things that shape those experiences. So when we talk about communities of color and helping communities of women, being able to operate from that place of believing in women and understanding that the world is bigger than your backyard.
You know, Tracy, I'm an exuberant woman and I've got a lot of energy and I'm very expressive. And so sometimes people misunderstand my warmth, because I'm also highly analytical and I'm very tough on people. And I want to say that I truly feel like I've been in the presence of greatness today. I have taken so many notes. The stories you told, the way you tell them, the cadence of your voice, what you intentionally choose to focus on, you are breaking through at so many levels. And so I just want you to know I'm gonna be adding you to my MBA course materials. I have lists of optional reading. Your book is gonna be on my reading list. I will certainly be highlighting your work on LinkedIn. And I feel like in just a few minutes, you have changed some things in my heart. And I just wanna say thank you.
Oh my gosh, what an honor. Thank you so much for such kind words. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Tracy. Thank you for all of your hard work. I appreciate
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate that you're elevating voices. We need that. We need someone who is giving a platform for women's voices and important voices in this world. So thank you for that.
Thank you for joining us for our second series with Uplifting Women in Philanthropy with these three empowering women, Angie, Tracy, and Lark, that I've met through my time with the Uplift Foundation during my undergraduate career at UWSP. Being a part of Uplift Foundation has allowed me to connect with these women on a personal level and to learn and expand my personal growth.
Remember, as Gloria Steinem said, the story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist nor any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights.
Stay tuned for our next uplifting series.
Until then, keep leading, keep thriving, and keep making a difference.